The sound of the truck's engine echoes on the deserted road, cutting through the oppressive silence of the night. The truck driver, with tired eyes, drives along the dark highway under a starless sky, with only the rustle of the wind accompanying his journey. The wheels crunch on the rough asphalt, and the cabin is illuminated only by the headlights. In the distance, dark mountains stand like sentinels in the desert, and strange lights flicker behind them, shining on the horizon. The truck driver knows he is close to Area 51, but for him, this is just a curiosity to be ignored. The radio hisses, interrupted by interference, and an unsettling feeling begins to take hold. Something seems out of place. Shadows move along the sides of the road, invisible in the headlights but clearly there. He grips the steering wheel, keeping his eyes fixed on the road. What he doesn't know is that something terrible has escaped the deepest secrets of that place. Something that does not belong to this world. A bloodthirsty being, hungry for human flesh, lurks in the darkness, and he, unknowingly, is about to become its next victim. Welcome to the channel where every ride could be your last. Here, we tell the darkest and most disturbing stories of drivers and passengers who have faced the unexplainable on the roads. If you like feeling that chill down your spine, subscribe now. Hit the bell so you don't miss any chilling stories, and share them with your brave friends. Get ready, because the next race could be yours. The desert road and the truck driver. The truck moves slowly along the dark, heavily paved road, cutting through the arid desert. Jack, the truck driver, stared at the road in front of him. He had been there before, near the famous Area 51, but he never paid much attention to the legends that surrounded the place. It was just another trip. Just one more load to deliver. In the cab of the truck, beside him, were his two assistants, Roy and Travis. Roy, the oldest and most experienced, was leaning back in the passenger seat, with his cap pulled over his eyes, trying to doze off. Travis, younger and always restless, fiddled with the radio, trying to find some music that wouldn't be interrupted by the interference that increased as they approached Area 51. Do you think these strange lights have to do with, that place? Travis asked, glancing sideways at Jack as the radio crackled. The tone of his voice was a mix of curiosity and uneasiness. Jack didn't take his eyes off the road, but his tired face showed he had no patience for conspiracy theories that night. The only thing that matters to me is delivering this cargo and returning home. We don't have time to dwell on strange lights or interesting stories. Travis shrugged, still curious, while Roy, on the other side, mumbled without opening his eyes, "Stop being a brat, Travis. This place is full of people with fertile imaginations. I've spoken here before and nothing happened. Stay still and get some sleep, go." But at that moment, the radio stopped working completely. A dense silence took over the cabin, broken only by the sound of the truck's engine and the rustle of the wind outside. Travis looked at Jack with an expression of uncertainty. "That's not right," he muttered. Jack opened the steering wheel harder, his attention now more focused on the road. In the distance, more strange lights flickered on the horizon, reflecting off the dark mountains. Something inside him told him that tonight would be different. "Relax," Jack replied with a stern tone. "It's just interference. Probably some military base nearby." Silence once again dominated the cabin. The road before them seemed to stretch endlessly, with no sign of life or civilization. But the lights in the sky got stranger and stranger, closer, almost as if they were watching them. Jack began to feel a tension in the air that he couldn't explain. And that's when something unusual happened. The truck's dashboards illuminated something on the side of the road. Jack, Roy, and Travis saw it at the same time, a tall, slender figure, covered in dense shadow, standing motionless on the side of the road. The truck passed too quickly for them to see details, but enough for them to realize that it wasn't human. Travis opened his eyes wide, his voice trembling. "Did you see that?" "That was, what?" Roy, now fully awake, looked back out the passenger window, trying to understand what he had seen. "Maybe it was an animal," he suggested, although his voice wasn't very sincere. Jack didn't say anything. He just sped up, trying to shake off the strange feeling of danger that was beginning to grow. "Whatever it is, it's over. Let's move on. 2 hours until the next stop." But the truth was that everyone in the truck was distraught. What they saw, or thought they saw, seemed wrong. It didn't move like an animal, and its silhouette was too long, too high. The next few minutes were completely silent, except for the sound of the engine. The atmosphere inside the cabin was tense, and the radio remained dead. The lights in the distance disappeared, but something worse was coming. Jack looked in the rearview mirror for a second, and what he saw made him grip the steering wheel tightly. "There's something following us," Jack muttered, his face rigid. Roy and Travis looked back, their hearts racing. Something moves in the shadows, running at high speed down the road after the truck. A figure that seemed larger, faster, and completely silent. The truck continued speeding down the deserted road. The oppressive silence that took over the cabin was disturbing, interrupted only by the roar of the engine and the wind that passed through the partially open windows. The once dry and hot desert air seemed to have become colder, almost as if something had changed in the surrounding environment. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. "Jack, are you sure you didn't see anything?" Travis asked again, still trying to understand what he had seen minutes ago. "I said it's over. We're not going back to see what it was. Whatever it was, it's after us now." Jack's response was short, but there was a clear nervousness in his voice. "I don't know, man," Roy replied, still looking in the rearview mirror, frowning. It didn't look normal. It wasn't an animal, and it seemed to be watching us. "Let it go," Jack said, trying to control the situation. "We need to focus on the road and get out of here as quickly as possible. There's no reason to worry about shadows on the side of the road. We should be tired and—" Jack was interrupted by a sudden crash. The truck gave a jolt, and the vehicle began to shake violently. He moves to maintain control, holding the steering wheel steady as the wheels momentarily avoid traction. "What the hell was that?" Roy nods, holding the panel in front of him to steady himself. "Hold on," Jack said back, as he tried to slow down without losing control. The truck finally picked up speed, slowly swaying before coming to a complete stop in the middle of the road. There was absolute silence for a few seconds, where everyone looked at each other, panting and scared. The truck's headlights illuminated the road ahead, but the shadows beyond the lights were denser, more impenetrable. Jack turned off the engine, and the deafening noise of silence took over. The radio was still silent, without any sign of life. "What happened?" Travis said, visibly tense. "It looks like something hit the wheel," Jack replied, taking a deep breath. "Or maybe there was a pothole in the road. I'll check it out." "Are you going to go outside?" Travis said, his voice full of understanding. "After what we saw, someone needs to see what's going on. If we just stand here, we're not going anywhere," Jack said firmly, but inside, he was also apprehensive. Something was very wrong. He could feel it. Jack grabbed a flashlight from the dashboard and climbed out of the truck, with Roy close behind, while Travis was in the cab, nervously watching them through the window. The surrounding desert was immersed in total darkness. Only the truck's headlight and the dim light of the moon illuminated what seemed like an endless road. Jack moved from the front wheel, shining his flashlight on it. "Damn, we blew a tire." He shook his head. "This will slow us down." "Was that all?" Roy said, relieved. "I thought it was something more serious." "It's nothing I can't handle," Jack replied, crouching down to examine the tire more closely. He passed a flashlight around, checking the road ahead, and then something caught his eye. On the asphalt, next to the wheel, there were deep marks, like scratches in the pavement. Jack frowned, trying to understand how that was possible. "What the hell?" he muttered. "Have you ever seen anything like this before, Roy?" Roy crouched down beside him and looked closely at the marks. "These marks are deep. It doesn't look like a hole or a stone, it looks like something scratched the ground." They exchanged glances. A heavy feeling of danger began to take over them both. Jack's instinct, which always maintained safety on long roads, was screaming at him to get out of there as quickly as possible. "Let's change this tire quick and get out of here," Jack said, getting up and going to the tool compartment in the back of the truck. Roy watched the marks on the floor for a second longer, before following Jack to the back. As he opened the compartment, Jack couldn't help but notice how the silence around him was crushed. There were no sounds of insects or nocturnal animals. Just the silence of the desert, interrupted by the gentle rustle of the wind. It was then that I heard a strange sound. A soft scratching, as if something was moving in the shadows near the road. "Did you hear that?" Roy said, voice full of tension. Jack stopped, tire iron in hand, and turned toward the direction the sound was coming from. He shined a flashlight into the desert on the side of the road, but saw nothing. The beam of light only illuminates the dry plants and stones scattered across the sand. "It must be the wind," Jack replied, but his voice wasn't so sure. "Let's change that tire soon." As Jack began to work, Roy continued to look around nervously, the feeling that they were being watched growing stronger and stronger. Suddenly, a loud noise of something hitting metal came from the back of the truck. "What was that?" Roy exclaimed, turning around sharply. Jack put down his tools and spoke quickly, shining his flashlight into the back of the truck. Something had hit there. Fuel cans littered the ground, and there were claw marks on the sides of the truck bed. "That wasn't the wind," Jack said, his heart racing. "Something is here." They remained silent, waiting, listening to the sound of the wind and their own hearts pounding in their ears. Suddenly, a quick movement flashed across the flashlight light. Something big, but too fast to see clearly. "Run. Let's get back to the truck," Jack said, and the two bolted back to the cabin. They ran as fast as they could, feeling like something was right behind them. When he finally reached the truck, Jack climbed into the driver's seat, slamming the door and locking it immediately. Roy entered through the other door, panting, while Travis, scared, looked at the two. "What was that? What happened out there?" Travis asked, voice full of panic. "Something's out there." "Something big," Roy replied, still trying to catch his breath. Jack started the truck's engine, but nothing happened. He tried again, but the truck showed no sign of life. "Damn. Now the engine doesn't want to run." Silence once again took over the environment, interrupted only by the heavy breathing of the three men. Suddenly, a shadow passed across the truck's panels. Travis mentioned, pointing to the window. "Over there. I saw something." Jack and Roy looked in the direction Travis indicated, and that's when they saw it. On the side of the road, right where the light from the headlight faded into the shadows, stood a tall, slender creature. Its eyes glowed with an eerie yellow light, and its body seemed to pulse with a strange energy, as if it were alive and in constant motion. The creature had long, thin arms, ending in sharp claws, and its skin was a grayish tone, almost translucent. She was standing still, watching the truck with a wild hunger in her eyes. "What the hell is this?" Travis spoke, his voice choked with fear. Jack tried to start the engine again, but nothing. "We can't stay here," he is sincere. The creature began to move, slowly and objectively, towards the truck. Her every step was accompanied by a soft scratching on the asphalt, as if her claws were scraping the ground. "Lock the doors," Roy commented, as Travis tried to curl up in the back seat. They could hear the sound of the creature breathing, slow and heavy, as if it was preparing to attack. The tension inside the cabin was palpable. Each second seemed to drag on forever as a creature got closer and closer. Jack tried every way to get the truck running, but the engine remained dead. Suddenly, a creature lunged forward, its claws tearing through the metal on the side of the truck with a terrible sound. The vehicle shook violently, and the men inside screamed in panic. The truck rocked violently as the creature's claws scraped the side of the bed, producing a reassuring sound of ripping metal. Travis spoke of terror in the back seat, his wide eyes fixed on the window. Jack gripped the steering wheel with all his might, trying to maintain control of the vehicle as the creature attacked with brutal force. "That thing is trying to get in." Travis spoke, his voice shaking, as he backed further into the seat. Roy, still in the passenger seat, looked desperately at the claws that appeared from the shadows, scratching the truck as if it were made of paper. "Jack, we have to get out of here. If that thing gets in, we're dead." Jack was already aware of the danger, his heart was racing, but the truck showed no sign of life. He tried to start the engine repeatedly, but all he heard was the engine misfiring. "Drug. I can't believe that damn truck just died." As the creature continued to tear at the metal, one of its claws managed to pierce the side window, shattering the glass into shards. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the cabin, and Roy immediately covered his face with his arms, trying to protect himself from the flying pieces. The claw reached into the cabin, blindly searching for its targets. Jack, without thinking twice, grabbed a tire iron that was next to his seat and, with a scream of pure adrenaline, delivered a brutal blow to the claw. The impact caused the creature to recoil momentarily, letting out a high-pitched, specific scream that seemed to vibrate inside the heads of everyone in the truck. "Get out of here, damn you!" Jack spoke as the tire iron shook in his hands. His breathing was heavy, and sweat ran down his face. He knew it had only bought a few seconds, but not enough to get out of there. "We have to get out of this truck," Roy said, panting, still looking around with wide eyes. "We can't stay here waiting for her." But getting out of the truck, he ran across the dark desert and confronting her directly, something Jack knew wasn't a much better option. He glanced at the rearview mirrors and at the shadows beyond his glasses. The creature was retreating, but it was obvious that it wasn't going to give up that easily. "And go where?" Jack snapped, still holding the tire iron tightly. "This thing is hunting us. If we leave now, we will be defenseless out there." "So what are we going to do?" Travis said, a tremendous voice of pure terror. A creature, which had momentarily disappeared from view, suddenly reappeared in front of the truck. Now, she was even closer, lit only by the headlights, her grotesque form clearly visible. Its claws were long and sharp, its eyes glowed with an eerie light, and its gray skin seemed to pulse with an energy that was disconcerting to look at. His face had no human expressions. It was a specific mask of horror. "It's right in front of us," Roy said, his voice barely audible with terror. Time seemed to stop for a moment as everyone inside the cabin held their breath. The creature appears there, as if it were evaluating its prey, planning its next move. "Jack," Travis whispered, almost out of breath. "Please do something." Jack didn't know what to do. His hands were shaking on the steering wheel, and he knew that trying to drive into the creature would be suicidal, especially with the truck in the condition it was in. But the only other option would be to go out and face that thing on foot. It wasn't an easy choice, but he knew that if they stood still, they would be doomed. Suddenly, as if sensing their hesitation, the creature let out another terrifying scream and charged forward, jumping directly onto the truck's hood. The impact caused the vehicle to shake again, and everyone inside screamed in terror. "She's going in," Travis commented, cowering in the back seat, trying to protect himself from the involvement. The creature began tearing at the roof of the truck, its claws piercing the metal with frightening ease. Jack looked at Roy and Travis, fear in his eyes. He knew he had no way out. "We leave now." Jack agreed, finally making a decision. "Take what you can and run. Let's try to strip this thing off in the desert." Without hesitation, Jack opened the truck door and jumped out. Roy and Travis quickly followed, fear driving them to move as fast as they could. Outside, the cold desert air enveloped them, and the darkness seemed even more oppressive. But they had no choice. The creature was bent on destroying the truck, and this was the only chance it had of escaping. "Where are we going?" Roy said, his breathing quickening as they ran down the deserted road. "Just run," Jack replied, looking over his shoulder to see if the creature was following them. They ran toward the darkness, with no clear plan, just trying to survive for one more minute, one more second. With every step they took, the rough desert floor hurt their feet. Their boots kicked up the dry dust of the asphalt, but what bothered them most was the regretful silence that surrounded them. There were no children of persecution. Nothing but the wind that blew gently. They ran for several minutes until they finally stopped, panting, trying to catch their breath. Jack looked back, his eyes scanning the darkness for the creature. Did she stop?" Travis said, almost in disbelief. "Maybe it's still destroying the truck," suggested Roy, reinforcing the effort to breathe. "That thing was angry, maybe it's still busy." "It doesn't matter," Jack said, his tone hard. "We can't go back. The truck is gone. We need to find help, and quickly." They weren't in the middle of an empty desert with no signs of life for miles. The only sound that accompanied their labored breathing was the rustle of the wind over the sand and cracked asphalt of the road. The night seemed to have no end. But something inside Jack bothered him deeply. Oh, silence. The creature had a way of making noise. It wasn't a good sign. "Stay tuned," said Jack, still looking around. "This thing could be hunting us, and at any moment, it could attack again." Suddenly, a distant sound cuts through the silence. It was not a creature. It was a familiar, almost reassuring sound, the roar of engines. Jack narrowed his eyes, and in the distance he saw a pair of headlights approaching down the road. "It's a car," Roy exclaimed, his hopes renewed. "Someone is coming." Jack watched, still cautious, but also feeling a hint of disruption. They were no longer alone. As the vehicle approached, lights revealed what appeared to be a military train. 2 jeeps provided with pickups quickly approached. "It's the army." Travis sincere, with a desperate smile. "We are saved." The military jeeps screeched to a halt beside them, and the heavily armed soldiers got out, their weapons already raised. The leader of the group, a man in camouflage fatigues and a serious expression, changed from Jack, Roy, and Travis. "What are you doing here?" the soldier asked, his voice authoritative. "This sector is closed. No one should be around." Jack, still panting, took a step forward. "We were attacked by something. Something that is not human." The soldier frowned, but didn't seem surprised. "You saw something, didn't you?" he said in a low tone. "Something that got away." "Yes," Jack replied, still trying to understand what was happening. That thing, it attacked us." Before the conversation could continue, the sound of metal being destroyed echoed in the distance, in the direction of the truck. Everyone's gaze returned to the source of the sound. "It's coming," the soldier said with a dark tone. "Get ready. This thing won't stop until everyone is dead." The sound of metal being destroyed echoed along, coming from the direction of the abandoned truck. The group of soldiers, along with Jack, Roy, and Travis, prepared for the outcome. The silence that had been broken by the sudden explosions now brought with it a new sense of fear. The creature was coming back, and this time, it wasn't just interested in the truck. The leader of the soldiers, Sergeant Miller, gave quick orders to his men, who positioned themselves around the military jeeps. "Defense formation," he is sincere. "Keep your guns pointed at the road. Whatever's coming, we'll neutralize it." Jack, still shaken, looked at the soldiers setting up a line of defense. "You've seen this thing before, haven't you?" he told the sergeant. Miller, with a grim expression, just nodded. "We're here because of her. Something escaped from Area 51 a few hours ago. An experiment, or something that should never have seen the light of day. So we've been hunting this thing ever since, but it looks like it found us first." Roy, standing next to Jack, was uneasy. "So do you know what this is?" "Not exactly," Miller replied, without taking his eyes off the road. "But we know it's deadly, and that it won't stop until everyone is dead." The silence surrounding the sergeant's statement was unbearable. The soldiers were nervous but well trained. Their weapons were poised, ready to fire at the first sign of movement. Jack, Roy, and Travis stayed behind the defense line, waiting, knowing that a creature was about to appear. And then, suddenly, a strange sound cut through the air, something between a high-pitched scream and a roar, echoing through the darkness of the desert. Jack felt a shiver run down his spine. "She's close." The headlights of the military jeeps illuminated the road ahead, but the creature was still hidden in the shadows. Everyone waited with bated breath, until one of the soldiers saw something move. "Eye contact," we talked to the soldier, pointing his gun. The creature slowly emerged from the darkness, walking towards them with almost feline movements. It was a terrifying sight. His tall, slender body, which had previously only looked grotesque, now looked even more menacing in the light of the weapons. Her eyes glowed with unearthly fury, and her pale, translucent skin seemed to glow in the moonlight. Her huge claws scratched the ground as she walked forward calmly, as if nothing could stop her. "Fire at will." Sergeant Miller ordered the soldiers to open fire. The sound of blasts of destruction shattered the silence of the night, echoing across the desert like thunder. The bullets ricocheted and pierced the creature's body, but it didn't stop. Every step he took was accompanied by a horrible sound of tearing metal and bullets ricocheting off his skin, which seemed tougher than anything the soldiers had faced before. Jack, Roy, and Travis ducked behind the jeeps, trying to protect themselves from the chaos around them. "This isn't working," Roy spoke, responding to the ears as the sound of bullets exploded around them. A creature continually advancing, immune to the soldiers' heavy fire. One by one, the soldiers wanted to retreat, realizing that their weapons were not having the desired effect. Sergeant Miller maintained his position, but his eyes already reflected hopelessness. "Stand back." Back away, he tried, but it was too late. In an extremely quick movement, the creature leapt over the line of defense, its claws cutting through the air with a sinister shine. The first soldier who was next had no chance to react. The creature grabbed him by the neck, lifting him off the ground as if he weighed nothing. The soldier gathered himself together, but the sound was quickly drowned out as the creature threw him against one of the jeeps, shattering the metal and the man's body with brutal force. The other soldiers began to fire frantically, but panic was taking over. The creature moved with a speed and precision that was impossible to keep up with. Within seconds, 2 more soldiers were tossed into the air like rag dolls, their screams instantly silenced. "Help me," one of the soldiers as he tried to reload his weapon, but before he could finish his sentence, the creature rushed at him, slashing him with its sharp claws. Blood splashed onto the asphalt, while the soldier's body fell limp. Jack, Roy, and Travis watched in horror as the massacre unfolded before their eyes. In a matter of seconds, the defense line had been destroyed. The creature was relentless, eliminating everyone in its path with indescribable strength and brutality. "We're screwed," Travis spoke, his body shaking uncontrollably. "This thing is going to kill us." Sergeant Miller, now with an injured arm, was still trying to fight. His pistol was fired repeatedly at a creature, but it was useless. The creature quickly shifted, its claws ready to attack. Miller looked into the creature's eyes for a brief second before it ripped his chest open, tossing him aside as if he were nothing. "No," Jack spoke, but his voice was lost in the chaos. The creature, now protected by the soldier's blood, slowly turned towards Jack, Roy, and Travis. His eyes shone with an insatiable hunger. They were next. "Corin," Jack remembered, pulling Roy and Travis with him. The 3 threw themselves into the darkness of the desert, running as fast as they could, with the creature right behind them. Their legs burned with exhaustion, but adrenaline drove them to continue. They knew that if they stopped for a second, they would be dead. The desert seemed endless, without any place to hide. The lights of military jeeps, once a sign of hope, were now just a distant memory. Jack ran without looking back, his heart hammering in his chest. The sound of the creature's claws scraping the ground behind them was constant, as if death was close behind. "She's getting close," Travis sincerely, his voice full of desperation. Jack looked at the horizon, looking for anything that could be used to hide or mislead a creature. It was then that he saw something. In the distance, there was a small rocky hill. "There, he is sincere. Climb those rocks. Maybe we can lose her." They ran toward the hill, their legs heavy and their lungs burning. When they finally reached the rocks, they began to climb quickly, noticing the weight of the creature approaching. The creature reached the bottom of the hill, its claws scratching the rocks as it tried to climb after them. But the rocks were too deep for her to climb easily. Jack, Roy, and Travis managed to get a few feet away, finally finding a brief moment of alarm as they stared at the creature below, trying to reach its prey. "How long will this hold us?" Roy said, still panting. Jack shook his head, not knowing the answer. They were trapped on the hill, and the creature was still there, waiting. "We can't stay here forever." A creature stared at them, its eyes glowing in the darkness, as it let out a deafening scream that echoed through the surrounding rocks. They were alive, but for how much longer? The creature's deafening scream echoed off the rocks, reverberating across the silent desert. Jack, Roy, and Travis were panting, their bodies exhausted but their minds still on high alert. They located themselves perched on the rocky hill, looking down at the creature below. The creature moves with a disturbing personality, as if it knows time is on its side. She tried to climb the rocks, her claws scraping against the deep surface, but to no avail. For now, they were out of his reach. "We can't stay here for long," Jack said, his voice thick with tension as he looked at Roy and Travis. "She won't give up. It's only a matter of time before she finds a way to reach us." Travis was completely shaken, his face sweaty and pale, his eyes wide with fear. "We're trapped. There's nowhere to run. What are we going to do?" Roy, still trying to catch his breath, looked around for any sign of hope. "We should try to get down the other side of the hill. Maybe we can bypass this thing and reach a side road or anything that will get us out of here." Jack agreed, even though he wasn't sure it was a good idea. They didn't have many options. They are invited to wait for a slow and controlled death. "Right," he said. "Let's move. And quickly." They moved carefully down the opposite side of the hill, trying to make as little noise as possible so as not to alert the creature. Jack looked back one last time to make sure the creature was still on the other side. Their eyes found the creature, which, even without being able to climb the rocks, watched them fixedly, its yellow eyes shining in the darkness. "She's still there," Jack murmured, feeling a shiver run down his spine. "But we have to go." With slow, calculated movements, the three men descended the rocky face of the hill. The terrain was rough and uneven, and each step felt like a new battle against gravity. They slipped and tripped on the loose rocks, but they kept moving, knowing they couldn't stop. Upon reaching the foot of the hill, the silence of the desert enveloped them again. The darkness around him seemed infinite, and the sound of the wind was the only companion he had. Jack looked around, trying to see some landmark, but there was nothing. Without the truck, without the military jeeps, they were completely isolated. "Where to now?" Travis asked, still panicking. "We're in the middle of nowhere." Jack shook his head, without having a concrete answer. "There has to be a road somewhere. Or a building, a gas station, anything. We can't just sit here and wait for this thing to find us again." Roy, looking at the horizon, indicated something along. "Over there. I think I saw lights. Maybe it's a small town or a farm. Whatever it is, it's better than standing here." Jack opened his eyes, trying to see what Roy had seen. There was indeed a faint glow on the horizon, almost imperceptible at first glance, but it was the only sign of civilization it possessed. "Okay, let's go in that direction," he said. "Stay together. We can't lose anyone now." They quickly walked towards the distant lights, their bodies still exhausted but driven by the pure fear of being captured by the creature. With every step, they looked over their shoulders, fearing that a creature was close behind, but the desert remained quiet, for now. "Is she still following us?" Travis asked, in a low voice, almost as if he feared that the very mention of the creature might attract her. I don't know, Jack replied, his eyes fixed on the horizon. But I'm not going to risk finding out. As they advanced, the distant light became brighter, revealing what appeared to be a small building, an old cabin, or perhaps an abandoned gas station. It was surrounded by some dry, gnarled trees, but at least it seemed like a place where I could rest and, with luck, find some form of communication. "What is that?" Roy said, his voice mixing hope and caution. "Stop a post." Jack looked closer and realized that Roy was right. It was a small gas station with a single old pump and a worn-out building that looked like it had been abandoned a long time ago. But even so, it was a shelter. "Let's go there," said Jack, quickening his pace. "Maybe we hope to find something useful, or at least hide." They arrived at the station and, as they approached, they noticed that the lights were coming from inside the building. It was a weak, flickering light, as if it was about to go out, but it was enough to illuminate the room. Jack, ever cautious, left the front door and entered slowly, followed by Roy and Travis. The interior of the station was as worn out as the exterior. The shelves were empty, the floor covered in dust and debris. It looked like no one had been there in years. However, there was a strange feeling in the air, as if someone or something had happened there recently. "Someone must have been here," Roy commented, looking back. "These lights don't turn on by themselves." Jack nodded, his hand steady on the tire iron he still carried as a makeshift weapon. He moved from the counter and saw an old radiocom on it. The machine was covered in dust but appeared functional. "Maybe we hope to use that," Jack said, turning on the radio. The device made a low static noise, but it was still alive. It might be our chance to call for help. As he adjusted the radio, trying to find a signal, Roy began checking other parts of the station. Travis, still restless, constantly looked out the windows, fearing that a creature would appear at any moment. The radio finally sputtered to life, and a clipped, static-filled voice emerged. "This is the Nevada Patrol, who's speaking," the voice echoed over the radio. Jack, relieved, quickly grabbed the microphone. "This is Jack, we're stuck in the desert, on the way to Area 51. Something attacked us. We need help immediately." The response came with more static. "Repeat, we don't understand, something about Area 51. "Yes." Jack spoke back. "There's a creature here. It attacked us and killed several soldiers. We're in an abandoned gas station near Highway 375. We need help now." There was a long pause on the other side. The voice finally responded, with a tone that was anything but reassuring. "Understood. We're sending a unit to your location, but be careful, we don't know what's loose out there. Stay hidden." Jack turned off the radio, feeling a chill. They were rescued, but a creature was still out there, waiting. "Help is on the way," Jack said, turning to Roy and Travis. "But we need to stay hidden until they arrive." As they prepared to find a place to hide inside the post, heavy footsteps outside interrupted the silence. "Oh, no," Travis muttered, feeling the fear rising again. Jack glanced at the door, knowing exactly what was on the other side. "She found us." The heavy footsteps outside the gas station made the concrete floor tremble slightly, as if the creature's every movement was sending even more terror into their hearts. Jack, Roy, and Travis froze, their bodies tense as they tried to control their heavy breathing. The dense and oppressive silence that took over the small space made the sound of the footsteps seem even more threatening, getting closer and closer. "She's here," Jack murmured, almost as if he was talking to himself. He held the tire iron in his hands tighter, knowing it wouldn't be enough to face her, but with no other option. Travis, already on the verge of collapse, was shaking uncontrollably. We need to get out of here. She's going to kill us, just like she killed the others." His voice was a frantic whisper, and his eyes never left the front door, where shadows danced in the dim light. Roy, always the most pragmatic, tried to think of a quick solution. "If we try to run now, she'll catch us on the road. We have to find a way to outsmart her, maybe buy time until rescue arrives." "And how do you suggest we do that?" Jack replied, without taking his eyes off the door. The sound of metal scraping outside made them all take a step back. It was a creature that moved around the station, examining, evaluating. Jack knew he didn't have much time. The radio was silent again, and any hope of rescue seemed distant. Desperation was beginning to take over them, but Jack, fighting to survive, took a deep breath and began to think. "Listen," he said, trying to maintain control. "We can't just wait here like simple prey. She's hunting us. We have to turn the tide." Roy frowned. "What do you have in mind?" Jack looked around, assessing the inside of the gas station. There was a small maintenance room in the back, with a reinforced metal door. He pointed there. "We can lock ourselves in that room. Maybe she won't be able to reach us. If we can do that, we buy time until rescue arrives." Travis, visibly scared, shook his head. "What if she manages to get in? We're out of weapons, and she's much stronger than the door." "It's a better chance than standing here," Jack replied. "Let's hide, and if she tries to break down the door, we can escape through the back window. If running isn't an option, at least we have a last line of defense." Without any more time to argue, they quickly rushed to the maintenance room. Jack was the last to enter, closing and locking the metal door behind them. The sound of the lock engaging was almost comforting, but it didn't last long. Inside the small room, they found several tools and a narrow window which overlooked the back of the station. It wasn't big enough to escape quickly, but it would provide an escape route if necessary. Silence once again dominated the environment. The only light came from a lamp suspended from the ceiling, which blinked intermittently, increasing the already unbearable tension. Jack moved from the window and looked out, hoping to see something beyond the darkness of the desert. But all he saw was empty expanse, except for a distant silhouette that moved along. He opened his eyes. Was it rescue? "Do you think help will arrive in time?" Roy said, his voice low and controlled despite his evident fear. "We have to believe that," Jack replied, without looking away from the window. Suddenly, a loud noise reverberated through the room, a metallic sound, as if something was scratching the outer surface of the metal door. A creature had found its prey and was testing its defenses. Everyone in the room stopped breathing for a moment, listening to the sages who wanted to break through the steel. "She knows we're here," Travis whispered, panic starting to tell him again. "She's going to come in." The supports remaining louder and more intense. It was as if a creature was exploring the door, trying to understand how it could break in. Time seemed to drag by, each second more harrowing than the last. "Stay ready," Jack muttered, gripping the tire iron so tightly his knuckles turned white. "If she gets in, we fight." Suddenly, a louder sound. The creature delivered a powerful blow to the door, causing it to shake in its bonds. The three men took a step back, their hearts racing, knowing that the final confrontation was about to happen. Jack looked out the back window, knowing his escape route would be his last chance. "If she breaks down that door," Jack began, looking at Roy and Travis. "You are correct. Don't stop for anything. Run into the desert and keep going until you find rescue." Roy agreed, but Travis was still almost in shock. Another blow to the door, this time stronger, made the hinges creak dangerously. Jack knew he didn't have much time left. The creature was determined to get in, and the only thing they had now was the will to survive. "Stay behind me," Jack said, stepping forward, his makeshift weapon in hand. The creature delivered another devastating blow, and this time, the door began to give way. The light in the room flickered again, and the sound of the creature's claws scratching metal filled the air with a horrible sound. Jack was ready to fight, even though he knew his chances were slim. Suddenly, the radio in Jack's pocket crackled with static, and a voice emerged, clear and urgent. "We're approaching your position. Hold on tight, we're almost there." Jack looked at the others, trouble taking over him for a brief moment. "Rescue is on the way," he said with a sigh, trying to keep hope alive. But before that could happen, the creature delivered the final blow to the door. With a deafening crash, the door was ripped from its curves, falling heavily to the floor. The creature entered the maintenance room, its giant silhouette blocking the light from the entrance. The air in the room grew thick, everyone's breath caught in their lungs. The creature moved slowly, its eyes fixed on Jack, Roy, and Travis. It was as if she was savoring the moment, knowing that their fight was coming to an end. "Corin," Jack said, pushing Travis towards the back window. Roy grabbed Travis and pushed him out the window, while Jack positioned himself between them and the creature. He knew he had no chance, but his sacrifice was the only thing that could give them a chance to escape. With a scream of pure adrenaline, Jack swung the tire iron at the creature. The impact was minimal, but enough to draw the beast's attention. The creature let out a deafening scream, its claws raised, ready to deliver the final blow. But before she could attack, an engine noise came from outside. Powerful headlights illuminated the room, and a hail of heavy gunfire hit the creature from behind. It became a furious roar as the sound of automatic weapons echoed through the night. Rescue had finally arrived. Armed soldiers appeared around the gas station, firing their weapons at a creature which was now under heavy fire. Jack, seeing his opportunity, sent for the window, helping Roy pull Travis out. The creature roared in pain as it was hit by the shots, but even so, it continued to resist. Jack and the others ran away from the maintenance room as the soldiers advanced, their weapons exploding with incessant fire. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the creature gave its last scream and fell to the ground, its grotesque body writhing before finally stopping moving. Silence once again reigned in the desert, broken only by the distant engine of military jeeps. Jack, Roy, and Travis turned to look at the fallen creature, their bodies exhausted and their hearts still racing. They had survived, but the experience had changed forever. The silence that fell over the confrontation was almost as disturbing as the moments of terror that were vivid. Jack, Roy, and Travis looked still for a few seconds, their bodies completely exhausted and their minds still processing what had just happened. The sound of military jeeps and the voices of soldiers in the distance sought to fill the emptiness around them, but the break seemed distant. The creature lay on the ground, a grotesque and specific being, its pale skin now covered in dark, shiny blood. Even though she was dead, her presence still hung heavy in the air, as if part of her threat was still there, waiting to reveal itself. Jack, still panting, bent down, resting his hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath and focus. He looked at Roy and Travis, both as shaken as he was. They had survived, but we could barely understand it. "Is it over?" Travis said, his voice tremendous, as if he wasn't already included. Roy nodded slowly, but his eyes were fixed on the creature's body. It seems so, but how do we know there aren't more of those things? The fear in his voice was clear. Jack looked at a dead creature, realizing the weight of Roy's question. "I don't know," he replied, shaking his head. But whatever it was too dangerous to be on the loose. The sound of heavy footsteps moved away, and Sergeant Miller, still injured but alive, appeared beside them. He watched the creature on the ground with a grim expression. "We've got it, for now," Miller said, his voice tired but firm. This thing was an anomaly. It escaped Area 51, but it's not the only one. Jack headed straight for the sergeant. "How many more of these things are there? Did you know what you were releasing?" Miller hesitated for a moment before responding. "What happens at Area 51? Are things most people shouldn't even know. And what you faced tonight is just the tip of the iceberg." Jack felt a shiver run down his spine. "So this isn't over, is it?" "No," Miller replied, his tone somber. "It never ends." Soldiers collected the creature's body, placing it in a blind truck, while the final rescue arrived to take Jack, Roy and Travis to safety. As they drove away from the gas station, the darkness of the desert surrounded them again. But now, that road seemed even more dangerous, as if it was full of secrets and hidden horrors that no one should ever discover. As the jeep moved along the deserted road, Jack looked at the horizon. The distant lights of Area 51 glowed as a reminder of what had been released that night. He knew that although he survived, the nightmare was far from over. There were more secrets hidden within that base, more creatures waiting in the darkness, waiting for their next chance to escape. "What if it happens again?" Travis asked quietly, looking at the surrounding desert. Jack didn't respond. He knew that eventually the desert would call again. Next time, they might not have been so kind. The jeep sped away, disappearing into the vastness of the deserted road, as the lights of Area 51 slowly went out behind them. The mystery was still there, hidden in the heart of darkness, waiting for the next time the world would come face to face with what should have remained buried. Did you like this story? Do you have something incredible to share? If you or someone you know has had a hair-raising experience in traffic, whether as a driver or passenger, send your story. Who knows, it might appear in our next video. Send your report in the comments or by email, and let's explore the mysteries of the road together.